thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate the invitation to come back and speak with you guys and to share some of the things that I've learned through my short time in leadership. And hopefully just really impress upon you the unique opportunity that each of you guys have here that have been selected to be part of this program. Some of you probably check the box and submit the application thinking that would be cool and we'll see what happens. And others probably were intentional about it. But hopefully when you guys finish this program, you guys all realize the gift that's been given to you by being a part of it. So I structured this with just some pearls that I've learned during my time as a leader. And I really want it to be informal, I want it to be a discussion. So as I bring up the different pearls, if you've had an example like that or if you have a question about it, don't wait to the end of the presentation. Let's have a dialogue because I'm sure someone else sitting here also has a similar idea. I currently work in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm the chair of the Department of Orthopedics at Kaiser Permanente in Georgia, and we'll be going. So just to give you a little roadmap as to where we're going to go today, I'm going to give you my journey and kind of where I started from and where I'm at now. And then we'll go through some leadership pearls, and then we'll follow that with question and message. So that's me 100 pounds ago. And that's back when I used to play college football at UC Davis. And that's a guy that had graduated the year prior that spent several years with me there. I use this as my first point because I started out as a UC Davis student athlete. And by nature of being a student athlete that was gifted in my academics as well, I was looked on as a leader just because you were smart and you were a student athlete. But I wasn't a leader, and what I mean by that is I hadn't been intentional about developing any specific skills. And in fact, there wasn't a curriculum design, there wasn't a course at UC Davis that I could have signed up for that I knew of, at least at the time, to where I could have developed leadership skills. And so I kind of went around modeling the best example I could be, trying to be the best person that I had learned to be from my parents. And that's what, quote unquote, made me a leader. Fast forward, UCSF Medical School, one of the top, as you guys know, just like Duke and all these other places, one of the top medical schools in the nation. There was not a, once again, program that I could sign up for to become a leader. But you once again did the best thing you could do. You went through, you got good grades, you worked hard on the wards, you studied for anatomy lessons, etc. But there wasn't anything intentional in terms of developing my leadership during that path, or during that time there. Then I was fortunate to meet a girl when I was in San Francisco, my now wife, who was from Boston, but she happened to be at UCSF doing her PhD. And I credit her as well as obviously the mentors that I've met at Duke. I credit her with opening my mind to apply outside of California for school, because I thought, oh, well, everything's stuck in California, there's no reason really to go outside of California. And that was my naive way of thinking. All I knew was California from when I was born and raised. But when I met her, I said, well, there must be good things outside of California. So we checked some boxes, and Duke was one of the boxes. And obviously, I knew Duke was a great program, but I didn't know anything about Raleigh-Durham. I just checked the box. And for those that are residents or fellows in here, you guys probably know how the interviews fluctuate yearly. And it turned out that year, Duke was one of the first cycle of interviews. So it was actually my first interview. And I come in and met our program director, who knew my name, knew where I was from. And it was just amazing. So anyways, that's where I ended up at Duke. I fast forward to the experience at Duke because that's where I got my first introduction to what being a leader truly was. And it was when I was sitting in your shoes 4 years ago. And that was at the direction of Dr. Fagan and Dr. Taylor and the various other people that helped run this program, including Dr. Doty, et cetera. And so that's where I got my first introduction to what leadership was, and it really helped give me the building blocks that I was able to then take through my career. SCOE is where I did my fellowship. Once again, no courses. I just tried to be the best person, but thankfully I had some tools that I had learned here that I was able to self-reflect and continue to develop. And then now in my current position at TSPMG, the Southeast Permanente Medical Group, they're actually very intentional about leadership. Whether you be a young leader in an organization or whether you're a COO, they take it through curriculums. I just went through a year-long curriculum where I went to Hawaii and Washington, as well as we had one of the sites in Atlanta, where we would spend a week at each place and learn from various leaders at those places and really help develop our skill sets. But I would tell you both what they have to do with the Fagan Leadership Program and what is at the Southeast Permanente Medical Group is not the norm. It's the exception. And so you guys are exceptional because you guys are a part of something that is not being taught everywhere and is not being enforced at a lot of places. So really take advantage of this opportunity. So I've already talked a little bit about this, but leadership is intentional. Yes, we have different titles, as Dr. Taylor alluded to. You know, some people are MD, some people are chair, yada, yada, yada. But that, unfortunately, will make you a leader for, let me back up. By having a title, a lot of people will look to you as because you have this title. So maybe you're leading a team or you're at the top of this totem pole. But the reality is, unless you're intentional about developing leadership skills, you will not be a good leader and you will not lead that team to where they need to go. And that's where programs like this really help ground you on what those key leadership characteristics and fundamentals are, so that you then can be prepared to go out and lead those teams. I'm going to pause. I don't want to just talk. Questions so far? All right, we'll keep going.
I have a question,
yes.
Chris. How are you intentional? How does intentional show up?
That's a great question. So in my current role, intentional involves a few things. One is continued I'm looking for the word, but essentially continued education down the leadership pathway. So you can't take a course or be involved in a year-long curriculum and then say I'm a leader. Yeah, you're a leader, but if you stop at that point, that's where your process stops, and you no longer are going to continue to advance and be equipped to lead in the best way possible. So being mindful that this is a journey, not just a one-stop shop, not just one book, not one TED Talk, not one Dr. Taylor lecture. It's going to be a lifelong journey. That's one way I'm intentional. And then another thing, I mean, there's several things I've done, but one thing that's been quite interesting and eye-opening for me, especially someone that has a team of people that I work with, is learning our different social styles. And that's something, I don't know if you guys have been introduced to that, but social styles, and depending on what algorithm you use, there's various different ways to categorize it. But the one that I looked at was where there's 4 different social styles. There's some people that are amiable, some people are more drivers, some people are expressive, and some people are analytical. And a lot of us have a little bit of characteristics of each of those. It's important to know where you fit in that spectrum, because that's how you come off as a leader. But it's also important to know those that you're managing or that you're leading, because if you're talking to an amiable in a very driver type tone, you're not going to get the best effort you're not getting the best effort out of that person. You're not going to get their best. They're not going to put their best foot forward because they're not being talked to in a way that they can relate to. And then vice versa. If you go to a driver and you're kind of using a lot of expressive language, they went somewhere else already. So that's something that I've been intentional about developing, and then learning with the people I currently work with, so that I can really speak to them in a way that resonates when I introduce different initiatives. Good question.
So Chris, you're a great front man for what we're going to be doing this afternoon.
Oh, okay.
Trying to figure out what people's preferences are for interacting with others. So,
yeah. Pay attention to that, because, like I said, it'll teach you about yourself, but then it'll truly teach you about those that you interact with, and you can't lead if there's no one there that you're leading. So you got to have people on board, and you got to know those people, and you got to make them feel valued and respected. We've hit on this a little bit. Leadership is a continuous journey. It doesn't start and stop with the Fagan Leadership Program. You will have a great set of skills that you will be blessed to receive from this program. But if you stop with this, you won't be doing yourself a favor. You won't be doing Dr. Fagan a favor. You won't be doing Dr. Taylor or anyone else, Dr. Doty, anyone else that's put time into this program. So really take this as one of the first steps on your leadership journey, but then continue to fly from here and continue to develop your leadership skills and develop other leaders behind you. So this one, I'm going to pause and give an anecdote. So this one says, doing the doing the easy thing makes you popular. Doing the hard thing makes you a leader. And I mean, it reads pretty easy and self-explanatory, but I want you guys to reflect on that for a moment, because it's easy when I'm managing a group of 25 physicians and PAs and other people to say, yes, you can order an additional test just because you want to order it, or yes, you can send the patient to get stem cell therapy because you feel it's indicated. What's harder is to say, hey, let's take a step back. Let's make sure we're doing this from a patient-centered approach, and help me understand how that treatment that you're suggesting is actually going to help that patient. And so I'll give you an example. Recently in my department, one of the physicians that I work with was named to the physician director of research for the Southeast Permanente Medical Group. So in part of one of his early projects, he went out and gathered some MRI data for the department as well as for the organization as a whole. And what he specifically looked at was MRI ordering in patients over 50 years old. And for those that have been around orthopedics, there's sometimes they're indicated. You have someone like Dr. Taylor, who's only probably 35, but still. You have someone like Dr. Taylor who's fit, probably doesn't have any arthritis, and if he came in with knee pain, it might be appropriate to get MRI. But then you have some other people that have had 5 knee surgeries and probably have arthritis, and MRI is not appropriate. So it was very important to look at this population to make sure we were using the resource appropriately. So when he looked at it, I noticed that one particular physician was about 8 times higher than anyone else. And he was one of the newest physicians to our practice. In fact, he's just about to finish his 1-year anniversary, or come up on his 1-year anniversary with us. And so I took the data, and initially I'm thinking, you know, he's had some troubles here and there with the Health Connect system. We've kind of coached him around other things. The easy answer here is just kind of push this data to the side and let him just keep moving so that he kind of feels uplifted and doesn't, you know, get bogged down in this. But then as I thought about it, I grounded myself in what we believe in as an organization and as a department, and I said, you know, patient-centered care is really at the heart of what we do. And there might be a great explanation for this, but I'll never know unless we start a conversation and have a dialogue. So I approached this physician and shared the data, and approached him in a very open way, and asked him just to help me understand why his data was what it was. And when he was very kind, he said, yeah, it's because I get MRIs and everyone I do a total knee on. And I said, okay. Help me understand that. And so it turned out there's some implant companies that you can get an MRI and you can send them the MRI and they will send you patients specific cutting jigs so that you can make your cuts. And so we talked about that, and I said, you know, where's the data behind that? Because I certainly understand how this is cutting edge and maybe it's, you know, kind of the vogue and cool thing to do. But what value is it adding to those encounters with the patients? And what is it allowing you to do better than you could do if you were doing it the conventional way? And so that conversation, and this, I'll pause for a second. In that conversation, I had a meeting about 10 minutes after we started, and I failed in the sense that I should have planned better, because you never know when you're having difficult conversations how long they will go. It's not appropriate when you're going to have what we call a crucial conversation to tap someone in the hall and say, hey, do you have a moment to talk? What you really need to do is set aside time both for that person you're going to be talking to as well as for the person doing the talking, and make sure that if it takes 30 minutes, you have 30 minutes. If it takes 5 minutes, you have 5 minutes. Whatever it's going to take, you've given yourself that amount of time so you can really do it justice. So to my discredit, I hadn't done that. And so I told him, let's both think through this and we're going to pick it back up. So I called him 2 days ago to pick this conversation back up and make sure we both had the appropriate time. And I said, you know, we both had time to reflect on what we discussed last time. And I just want to get kind of your thoughts after looking through the literature and after hearing what I had to say about MRIs in people who are 50. And he said, you know, I've thought about it. It's not the right thing to do. I think I got caught in with the whole implant company and just doing things that I thought were kind of the vogue things. But I'm just as good of a surgeon without it. I'm going to go back and do it without it. And I said to him, you know, are you sure? Is there any support I can give you with a course or anything like that? They said, no, I've been doing it for 30 years without it. They approached me, I started to do it. It was difficult to bring that to him. Thankfully, he took it in a very easy way and actually self-reflected and made the decision. But the easy thing, once again, would have been just kind of passing that data by and not focusing anything in a patient-centered approach. But by bringing it to him, we were able to get the best patient-centered outcome possible. And then one other bonus that came from that is he then said to me, oh yeah, the MRIs are also high because I've been doing degenerative knee scopes. And I'm going to stop that as well. And so it was a great exercise in him reflecting and thinking through how his practice was affecting our ultimate delivery to our patients and how he could modify that. And by having that difficult conversation, we were able to achieve that. So I'm going to pause because I said a lot, but yes.
Yeah, Chris, that's a great observation. And interestingly enough, even though you didn't design it that way, that time between the initial and the second probably helped that be a more productive conversation. Have you learned that from other times where sometimes it's like planting the seed, giving someone a chance, because that goes back to the stats, right? An introvert isn't going to want to talk out their right way. They're going to want to think about it and be thoughtful and come back with their own data.
And that's exactly what happened in this case. In fact, yesterday or 2 days ago when I called him, I have notes written out because once again, you got to plan for these conversations. This could be a very high stakes, high rewards conversation. And I had notes, and once I started talking and opened the conversation, he did it all for me. And I was like, great. And this was a 5-minute conversation, and he He felt valued. He didn't feel like he was told that he can't do this. I felt like our patients were getting the best outcomes, and we both felt like we did the right thing. And so to your point, yes, there are times when you certainly want to let things sit for a moment, let people reflect, and then allow the conversation to reconvene at a more appropriate time. Other comments? Yes.
The other great technique that Chris just demonstrated is what I call the questioning technique. Is that so when he approached this guy, he wasn't telling him something. He was asking questions, and he specifically used the words, help me understand. So especially when it's in a situation where you think there's a ethical issue, and perhaps the person and you feel uncomfortable challenging them directly with the topic, then use the questioning technique. Help me understand what you're thinking about in this situation. That's brilliant.
That's a great point. Invite others to be involved. When it becomes when it's clear you have an agenda and you're going to get through that agenda at all costs, some people will just shut down. And yes, they might end up doing it, but they really didn't buy into it. They did it because you told them, but next time you're going to have that same conversation. There's going to be more and more resistance. And so the more you can get them to buy in and feel like they're a part of it, the more that they actually embody it and they'll believe it and do it moving forward.
Hey, Chris.
Yes.
I don't know about is anyone in here a type A personality like me? Just raise your hand. Come on, fast out. Okay.
Come on, fast out.
I don't know about you, but I have trouble because I want to get through my agenda.
Yes.
I want to check it off my list. I want to get it done. And I know you all are very busy. So how have you learned to self-manage? When I'm sure you're the same.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be where you were if you weren't. How do you self-manage? How have you learned to self-manage, wanting to check that off and get it done versus that staying in that inquiry mode?
That's a great question. So technology is amazing. So before I had a planner, and if you didn't have a check through it, it was a task left undone, and it would keep me up until it was done. Now there's a postpone with technology, and so it goes off the list until the time that you postponed it until.
Oh.
And so at least obviously I'm still thinking about it, but it's not on that list, and the list isn't growing, because that's what happens with a lot of us people that are type A. You feel complete when that list is complete. Now really the work is never done. There's always something to add back, but the point is you feel better and more fulfilled as that list gets shorter and shorter. So the postpone button allows me to take 6 weeks or whatever it's going to be until we pick this conversation back up. The other part is really not getting stuck in the weeds. So you have to be able to parse out what's important to our mission and to where we're going right now, and what's a thing that I would like to have but doesn't need to be done right now. And if it's something that is either going to require a lot of resources but really not going to have real value to you, or something that, yeah, it could go either way, but it's really not that important to what you guys are doing, that might be something that I put on the back burner, and I'm okay doing that and saying I'll pick it up at a more appropriate time. I think also just watching great leaders that I work with and that I've been involved around do that same practice, who also I know are type A, but they're able to really tease out what are the things that we need to do today and what are the things that we can do in a week or two. And they keep their cool when they're doing that, and that helps me understand that it's okay to have some things that are still lingering, as long as I know that I can truly understand that those aren't things that have to happen.
When you're talking, it sounds like it's a leadership triage. So it's just like you triage a patient in the ER, what's important now, it sounds like you've created your own triage for how you're showing up.
Exactly. Some stuff happens in the ER, some stuff when they get to the ward, and some stuff with home health. So one thing that I think is very important, and I've been in my role now for almost 2 years. Early on when I stepped into this role, I realized that we did not have a clearly defined mission, vision, and values for our department. Our organization has a very clear mission, vision, and values. But our department did not have something written that we all were moving towards, and something that we all collectively were involved in creating. And so one of the first things I did when I assumed the new role is I wanted to sit down with the team and us to sit together and kind of set up what our mission, vision, and values were. And I would encourage you, as you guys go out, even currently when you're within your team, to really make sure that, especially if this is a long-term team, that you have those things set up. Because by having those things set up, a lot of decisions will already be made. For instance, if something goes against the value of integrity, they're going to know how Chris Jones is going to react to it, because it's not an emotional thing. It's based on, hey guys, we all agreed on these things. And this violated this thing of integrity, so now let's address the issue. And it doesn't become an emotional thing between two people, it becomes addressing the issue. So I'll just share what our mission, vision, and values are. And like I said, this is just an exercise I encourage you guys to do on your own. This really defines why these things are important. So a mission serves as your North Star, keeps everyone clear on the direction as your of our department. A vision, a clear vision helps us pursue our goals and defines our path to future success. And then values. Values are what you stand on. And if you don't know what you stand on, you'll fall for anything. So it's important to have a set of clear values that can be easily communicated and understood by everyone involved. So this is our mission for our Department of Orthopedics at TSPMG. You guys can read, I won't belabor this. And then there's our vision there as well. And basically they're really centered on us being the best that we can be, with the focus ultimately on being patient-centered. It's not about, you don't see in there that we want to make the most money. You don't see in there that we want to take care of the most patients. We don't want to be a factory, a throughput factory where patients are just coming through. We want to make sure that every patient we touch gets the best care possible, and that we're treating each and every one of those patients as if we were sitting in that shoe, or sitting in that seat as the patient. How would we want to be treated if the roles were reversed? And then, as mentioned, if you don't know what you stand for, you'll fall for anything. So we did come up with a set of core values, and these were very intentional by the department. The ordering was also very intentional. And we live by this. And so one of the natural things in orthopedics is the idea of teamwork. And teamwork is critical for a lot of the teams, whether it's orthopedics, internal medicine, et cetera. We all work in teams, and we're intradisciplinary and also interdisciplinary in the hospitals. And so teamwork is very, very critical. But then integrity, as I mentioned already, we have to do the right things for the right reasons at the right times. And then excellence of what we do. And then lastly, having a passion. Anyone have a chance with the teams that you guys currently work with to either see the vision and mission, vision, and values that have been set previously, or have you guys had a chance to create kind of this on your own previously? Any teams? Anyone? Well, something once again, and I would encourage you, this isn't a Chris Jones only task when I did it. I went to the group and we talked about this. It took time. We were intentional about it. It became a document that we all believed in, that we all embraced because we all contributed. And that's how you get buy-in from people, is involving them in the process, not just saying, hey guys, this is our third meeting of the year and this is our mission, vision, and values. Memorize them and take them to heart. You have to actually involve people to the best way possible, because that's how they're going to feel involved.
Chris, could I add something to build on that? I think even if you haven't done it within your own study or workplaces, we'll be expecting to do that as we move into our teams tomorrow and our project, because in every team this is important, and taking the time to do it well makes things go a lot better on.
It does.
Chris, can I ask you?
Of course.
That's awesome what you wrote there. Can you kind of give me an insight as to if creating a living, breathing document such as this that the group agrees to is what's important? Why such a disconnect between how long it takes for that culture then change? Because this probably takes a month perhaps of negotiating to put forward, but why 8 to 10 years or some thereabouts, even with an intentionality to change? Why such a delay, do you think?
You're right. Culture takes a lot longer than creating this document. And that's something I'm still working through with my department is changing culture. People get rooted in their habits, whether it be someone that uses tobacco and all the ads say, okay, it's going to kill you, all this stuff. That doesn't mean the person's going to stop. It takes a lot of coaching, et cetera, perhaps for that person to really internalize that they want to stop. And similar when you come up with these values, people, they feel good, they sound right, they are the things that we all want to identify with. Taking it from what sounds good to actually internalizing it and believing it and living it out daily is where that action of bringing it to culture actually becomes. And it's not, the thing with culture, all it takes is a couple people within that organization or that team to then start to revert back and try to bring people to the dark side again, to then throw turmoil in there. So what really is encouraging is when you can build a culture such that if you took a year-long sabbatical, you would feel confident and comfortable that because of the things you guys have worked on in all that time that you've been there, it's kind of self-regulating. Everyone believes in it, and if someone falls to the wayside or starts veering off to the left, those other 10 members are going to bring them back as opposed to them bringing the entire ship down. So I don't know if any of the other leaders in the room can speak a little bit more to that, but.
So Chris, you're really talking about shared accountability to each other and what you created.
Sure.
So I was curious about the mindset shift that you had to make because you brought this to play. The mindset shift that had to transition to a different behavior. What were you dealing with, and why did this help move, or in what way did it help move to a different behavior?
That's a great question. So Kaiser Permanente started off in on the West Coast, and there our market share is in some regions upwards of 50+% of the people in any particular market are Kaiser Permanente patients. In Georgia, we're one of the 8 regions. We're developing a bigger market share, but we're not quite the Northern California or Southern California region. When people were recruited to become orthopedic surgeons at Kaiser Permanente in Georgia, this occurred 6 years ago. So Kaiser Permanente has been there 30+ years, but orthopedics was a service that 7 years ago, if you had an issue, you were being referred out to a contracted physician in the community that was an orthopedic surgeon that we had a contract with, and they would take care of you. So it was a private group that we had a good contract with. And then it made sense to start internalizing specialties. And so they were intentional about it. They internalized specialties, including orthopedics. And so we had a department that was built, a large department built very shortly. And because it wasn't, people were brought in as individuals, and they practiced as individuals. They practiced as if this was my own practice. Yes, I have the Kaiser Permanente umbrella, but this is my own practice. There's really not anyone regulating me, so I can do that. So one of the biggest cultural shifts that I'm making and working to continue to reinforce is the idea that we need to practice Permanente medicine. And there's this, I'm not going to go into all of what Permanente medicine is, but it all centers around doing the best thing for the patient, making sure there's value and not wasting resources just to waste them. And there was a lot of waste in our system because, once again, people were their own clinicians. There wasn't a check and balance. There wasn't anyone really checking after people. And so as I assumed this role, we became more transparent about things, the MRI data. Other things like injections, for an example, would be hyaluronic acid injections. They're used very commonly, but what we noticed in the 5,000 that we did last year is literally it was less than, maybe 1%, maybe less, that actually got sustained, 6+ months of benefit in terms of what the manufacturer would recommend. So we made a bold move and said, we're not going to offer it. Not because it's a cost prohibitive, we have the money to pay for the injection. Because with Kaiser Permanente, as you guys might or might not know, Kaiser's our insurance side, Permanente is the physician. So it's not like we had to fight with insurance. We could pay for the injection. It was a cheap rate, but it was us looking at what we felt was the best thing for our patients. And we felt that our patients weren't getting consistent benefits, so we were introducing them to unnecessary risk without the consistent, or without benefits that we could hang our hat on. So to your point, basically myself going into the organization or to the department and looking at it and saying, hey, we have some habits that we really need to look at, and we need to challenge those habits. If they're correct after we've looked through them in an extensive fashion, then we'll continue with them. But if they're not, then we need to have some change management around those habits. And that's been a tough thing because in my department, I have people that are fresh out of fellowship, and I have people that are over 60 years old that have been doing this longer than almost as long as I've been alive. And so it's a tough dynamic to both manage people that are towards the end of their career, and also people that are just in the beginning, as well as those in the middle. But you have to once again not make it emotional and make sure that you're sticking to the facts and you're leading in a very fair way. What goes for me is going to be the same thing that goes for you. And what's our end goal? The end goal is how the patient is going to be treated in the situation and the value of simplicity. Hopefully I answered that. I gave you a little. Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about what it takes to maybe get to a point where you're open to changing the system? Because you mentioned if it's correct, then we'll do this. And so, there are areas within medicine that it's not correct or not correct. It might be preferable or maybe less, but that might be an opinion. And yeah.
Great question. I think it's an ongoing discussion. So even with our mission, vision, and values, if we in a week as a group decide that, we want to take passion off. Not because we're not passionate, but there's another word that embodies our group a little more. We want to make sure if we're only going to have 4 that we put it on that list. Then we have to be dynamic, and we have to have communication, and we have to be willing to not be so rigid that we can't open up and accept new ideas and change. And so when you're dealing with things that maybe there's not a very black and white answer as to what's right or wrong, I think it's very critical in those situations to be open, to look at all the information, and then to make the best decision based on the evidence you have. But to not make it on emotion, not to make it on feeling, or not to make it on this is how I was trained by my mentor, but to make it based on the evidence, or if it's a clinical decision, or if it's a leadership decision, you're making it based on the best information that you have available. I think people that are being led appreciate a leader that isn't so rigid that they aren't willing to put their own agendas aside to make sure that the group's agenda is advanced forward. So if the group comes to me and says, hey Jones, we like this, and this, but let's talk about this more. There's two ways you can approach that. No, we already agreed on this, let's keep moving on, or let's take time to look at it. And I think when you do the latter, that's when they feel valued, they feel like their input matters, and it becomes a shared agenda that really helps the group move forward. Other questions there? Yes.
For the previous example you gave with the less than 1% benefit, did you also look at the percentage of risk?
So the short answer is not in our particular region, but we do have some of that data for some of our registry stuff in Southern California, and they had gotten rid of it. They had basically made a bold move like we did a year prior, and they had looked at the relative risk. Thankfully, injections, if you do them under appropriate technique, tend to not have that high of a risk of infection.
Yeah.
But if you even take a 1% or 0.05% infection risk, and then you do the math with 5,000 people, and then compare that to the number that actually got benefit, it wasn't outweighing the benefits that people did.
And how do you make that decision? Because if the benefit and the risk are then the same, how do you make the decision to take it away instead of giving the patient the option?
Sure. So the patients do still have the option. The great thing is, because there are some patients that say, hey, I'm that 1% that it helped. Why do I have to be penalized? And those patients end up somehow on my schedule because my provider will have to. Yeah, so instead of having the 16-year-old ACL, I'll have the 65-year-old that wants to discuss soup points. And so, I'll bring them in and we'll talk. And what I share with them is I share the data. I share what is the best information I know of that we have regarding the problem. And I empathize with their experience. And I tell them that it sounds like you weren't someone that this applies to. You actually got benefit from it. I believe what you're saying. We've made a decision as an organization to go in this direction, but if you feel like this certainly still adds value to your care, there are other things that I will suggest to you that might have just as much value. And a lot of times they'll say, well, I've tried that, I've tried that. So then I get into the discussion that you're not limited to just a Kaiser Permanente physician. So if you really truly feel that is what gives you the value, then let me give you some sites in locally that you can go and pay out of pocket to get the service. Is that as favorable? No, because they want to pay their copay as opposed to out of pocket. But I think it then really helps the patients understand it. Do they need to go that route, or are there other things internally that we might be able to offer them? That's one of the things that's tough about bold moves. If you really believe that it doesn't help, then you have to make a decision as to whether you're going to give it to people or not. And if you start then saying, okay, I'll give it just to a few people, then that word gets out there, and then other people then say, well, you gave it to Mrs. Jones, why can't Mr. Smith have it? And then you're not really, there's not integrity behind that decision. Who knows? Maybe 2 years from now we'll be surprised. There'll be some large randomized control trial that comes out that shows it's great and we made a mistake. And you know what? That's another slide coming up later. But the idea there is we'll admit our mistake. We made a mistake. We thought we were doing the best thing for our patients. When they put metal and metal hits in, they thought they were doing the best thing for their patients. There's a lot of things we've thought in medicine because medicine is a science. There's very few things in medicine that are exact. But as we learn, you have to be able to adapt to that, rally your team around it, and then admit if it truly is a mistake, and learn from it, and then move on. Great question. Yes.
You used the word fair a few minutes ago when we were talking about interacting with your colleagues, and that's something that I have had to learn a lot about this year.
Sure.
Halfway through my chief experience, and it's really hard to be fair, and it depends on how you define it, I think. And I'm just wondering, how do you see that in leadership? What is fairness, and how do you enact it?
So whenever there's a fairness issue brought to me, I tell usually the person that's bringing it to me is the person that feels that the decision was unfair to them. And so I then try to think quickly on my feet and find a situation where it was fair to them, but it was unfair to someone else. and I say, okay, so when this decision was made, and this is more, I mean, it's not to say I told you so, but it's just to help them see it from a different lens. Because there's plenty of decisions that are made on a day-to-day basis that if they're fair to you, you're not usually making a deal about it. But that decision, the other side of the decision, probably didn't benefit someone else. So to them, they feel it was unfair. And then vice versa, you finally have a decision that in your eyes you feel was unfair, and so you bring it up, but you forget about all the things that have been favorable or fair to you. And so I try to help them understand that it's only unfair when it's unfair to you. A lot of times it's not unfair until it becomes unfair to you. And so let's look at the issue. Let's see where you're struggling to understand the issue, and let's work through it. Let's have a discussion and dialogue. And let me hear your side of it, because also I think people want to be heard. Sometimes they're not always looking to have the final decision change, but they want to be heard, and to validate or to at least empathize with their feelings, and then to have data or evidence or a backing behind why this decision had to be the way it was.
Chris, we've got about 10 more minutes.
Okay.
We don't want to lose your pearls, but I like
Yeah.
the dialogue as well, and give you a time indication.
Yeah, no, this is great. I mean, this is what the purpose of this discussion. So I'll click through some more. I don't have many. Well, I'm about halfway through them, but honestly, we can talk more over lunch, etc. Listen more, talk less. And we've hit on this. You really, in order to really lead a team of people, you have to hear them. You have to hear what's on their mind. Someone that never got a patient complaint starts, gets 3 or 4 in a week. Something might be going on at home. They might have had a pregnancy that they lost the child, or who knows? You don't know what's going on in people's lives unless you listen. And people won't share things that are personal to them unless they know they can come to you and they'll listen. Don't be this person. We've had those situations where you talk, and no one leaves that interaction feeling any better than they did going into it. But instead, think about this: our mouths can shut, our ears don't. So as long as you keep your ears open, those that you're leading will be happy to bring things to you. That doesn't mean that you're a dumping board. You have to also protect yourself as leaders, because people will, as you start to open yourselves up, try to make all their problems your problems. And so that's where really you have to take your skills as a leader, empower them to manage and lead through some of the smaller things that they have the skills to do so, and for them not to feel that everything has to land on your desk in order for things to get done. And so there's this thing we just instituted called a tiered huddle, where essentially things will constantly end up on my desk that I can quickly make a decision on, but it would be better if my staff or if my providers were able to do that decision themselves, because they don't really need to involve me. And it would also help develop them as leaders in the organization. And so this tiered huddle system sets a framework behind them getting together, discussing these issues that really don't need to be escalated up, and giving them tools as to how to address those. People work with you, not for you. You have to really hear that. It doesn't matter if you're in a private practice and you're writing every paycheck. It doesn't matter if you have the ability to hire and fire. These people have decided to wake up today, to roll out of the bed, to get in their car and go to work. If you treat them as if they work for you and not with you, you're not going to get the best out of them. You're going to have turnover. Morale is not going to be what you would like to have, and it's just not going to be the best environment. So just as you're working with people and as you're working with teams, if you're the top person on that team, just remember that team all decided to be there that day. They made a decision, and if you want to continue to get their best work, continue to value them as people and as members of that team, and take them on board. Take responsibility for mistakes. We've discussed this through other examples. Things are going to happen, but you have to be willing to step up and be the first to say, hey, I made a mistake. The soup parts thing that I thought was not the best injection for our patients. Duke University came out with a randomized control trial and blew my socks off. We got to reevaluate this, guys, and we also need to let our patients know that we maybe did them a disservice by taking it away for a couple of years, and we're going to get all those patients back and try to really help them get the relief they need. Those that you're leading are looking to you, and they're seeing how you react when you make mistakes. And if your reaction is to just brush it to the side as if it didn't happen, or to get upset, or to argue, then guess how they're going to act when things happen. I would much rather hear about a mistake one of my members made in private and us have a chance to discuss it, than for them to try to hide it and it come out in the public media, because that's how I handled my mistakes, and they felt like it was an environment where they weren't comfortable bringing it to a pause. All right, we're doing well. We're almost through the pearls, we only have a couple more, and then we can obviously keep going with questions.
Sorry, could I pick up on that? I think what you're touching on there is such a crucial thing, which links to your point of integrity. It's easy to sit in the room and talk about integrity and we'll make the right decision. Have you been at the edge where you really had to, what situation have you been where it's been really hard to make the right call? If I could put it there.
Thinking. So perhaps maybe, are you referring to maybe an ethical situation where?
Whatever, I mean, I think the thing is we can sit in theory as leaders and talk about what we will do in a particular situation. And the challenge is when the rubber hits the road and you are being seen as a leader, and just to highlight what the temptations are sometimes to not do the right thing and how we have the right thing.
Sure. So I'll give an example just from, this happens week to week, and I have to make the decision. So as the chair of our department, I get a little bit of admin time, not much, but a little bit. And there are times that either meetings get canceled, and so I might be free to do whatever, or a surgery gets canceled. And so it's not like there's someone, there are people that in our operations that look over this stuff, but they look over it maybe every 3 months, every 6 months. And so if I wanted to, I could easily have that afternoon off and come to Durham and hang out. Who knows? But the point is, where integrity comes in is reaching out and saying, hey, you know what? My meeting that was supposed to be set up for 4 hours today is canceled. Put patients on that schedule. Let's get the patients in that are waiting 3 weeks to see us. Let's cut that wait down. Let's get them in today. Let's model that so that other people in the department, when they're in that same situation, they'll do the same behavior without us having to find out about it 6 months, a year later, and then try to correct it. And influence culture once it's already been going on for so long. So by trying to live that example and doing what you're expecting of others, I think that's one example. I think I'm sure there's better.
Right. I think what you're highlighting there as well is something you mentioned earlier. When you're the leader, people are watching you all the time.
Yes.
And you are, whether you like it or not, you are the model of what you're giving the message of your leadership behavior.
And that brings me to a quote that I heard recently, which is, you gotta, and it goes back to that talking slide as well. Actually, it's the slide that's coming next, but regardless, think before you react. I mean, if we had a show of hands of people in here who have wanted to spout off at someone because they just rubbed you the wrong way with something they said, we would all at some point in our lives raise our hand. Maybe we didn't do it, which is a good thing, but we've all had a temptation to say what first thing that came to our minds. I would encourage you to think before you react. And the reason I would encourage you is because things you say or do can never be forgotten. At best, they can be forgiven, but never forgotten. And the time and effort and energy you're going to take to try to regain the trust, the respect, the loyalty from those members that you lead and that who had given you full trust previously is this is going to be a lot of wasted effort that you wouldn't have had to put in if you would have just thought before you react. That goes with talking, that goes with emails, it goes with letters, but no one sends letters anymore. So, but those are things to think about. A couple last points, and please keep the questions going, and we'll go for as long as we have. It's one thing to build yourself up as a leader, to be involved in programs like the Fagan Leadership Program and take all the pearls you can, but you got to develop other leaders behind you. If you're only doing it for your own benefit, when you leave that organization, or when you leave that department, or when you go on to become the President of the United States, how's that department going to function? Where are the other leaders at? Who's going to keep that ship going in the right direction? So take a moment, develop other leaders in the department. This year, in the last 4 months, we've named someone physician director of research in my department, and also we named another physician the director of Health Connect Essentials, which Health Connect is our Epic system. And there's ways that you can gain a lot of efficiency if you bring providers in to show them kind of the different tools. So we have someone now as a physician director that leads those classes and gives them kind of a 36-hour boot camp over Friday, Saturday, Sunday to help people catch up with Epic and become better equipped to manage our patients. So those are just some small things that we've done in our department, but I encourage you to look in your teams and think about ways to develop other leaders. So this is the one, act, think before you react. So you don't want to be this person. I don't think before I speak. I like being just as surprised as everyone else by what comes out of my mouth. That's not who you want to be. But instead, what I would say is use this acronym here. The idea that is it true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? And is it kind? And if it is, then go ahead and hit send, or go ahead and say it. And if it isn't, put it in the drafts folder. Read it the next morning. And if it still isn't, reword it. And if it still isn't, maybe delete it. And then pick up the phone and maybe say, make sure that you have kind of your talking points and that they're very, able to receive these. My last slide, and then we'll close. Go slow before you go fast, or go slow to go fast. As leaders, and especially when I got into my role, I saw all these things. I saw cultural things. I saw individual practitioner things that I wanted to change. I saw procedural things that I wanted to change. There's a lot of stuff. That stuff is going to be there, and there's going to be more stuff once that stuff is accomplished. You have to figure out and triage what's most important to get your department and your group moving in the right direction. And then you start picking off pieces of each of those things based on their priority. As we all know this story, the tortoise and the hare. The tortoise ends up winning the race, and it's because you don't get stuck in the weeds. You don't have to do a lot of rework because you think through things before you actually jump into them. And as the Navy SEALs say, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. So it's not always about trying to just go in there and create mayhem. So in conclusion, leadership is a journey. You have to be intentional on this journey. If you're not intentional, you will not be able to develop yourselves into the best leaders and those around you. I can't read those slides. You have to develop other leaders. It's important not only to take from this journey what you can, but pass it on. That's why am I here? It's not because I'm this great person. No, it's because of people that have invested in me the time and energy and effort to help develop me, and then I'm able to share with you guys, who then you guys will share with your team, and it just keeps propagating. And then lastly, have a clear mission, because you guys have to know where you're going. So I want to thank you, and if there's any additional time, great. If not, we can definitely chat over lunch.
Time for one more question.
Yes.
Oh, I had my question from earlier.
Oh, yes.
How do you see the decisions, or I guess leadership in like everyday practice, like the conversation? How often do you have conversations about, I guess maybe going back to Chan's question, like in terms of changing the culture, like having conversation about leadership itself to implement change.
So every meeting we have, which we have a provider meeting every fourth Tuesday, we start with our mission, vision, and values. We make sure that, and it's not me reciting them. Someone says the values, we talk about, we make sure that that's the foundation. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. Right now we're going through a transition where we're going to be operating out of Emory University Hospital, so there's this big change management project going on. But that doesn't engulf us. We start with the foundation of who we are, and then we branch out and deal with all the other stuff. So just being intentional and saying, this is important, let's spend some time on it. As I go to different courses, which I've been thankful to be involved in several, I pick up little pearls and I bring them back. So now after doing the mission, vision, and values, we go around. What are you grateful for? Take a moment for gratitude. I'm thankful I woke up today. Or I'm thankful I have a wife, or whatever it is. But everyone's can think about it. And that just gets people thinking in different ways than they might have. And it takes it from being a very business oriented, we've got to get through all this stuff, to just realize we're people. We're all part of this fabric. We're a team. We're working together, and we all appreciate each other for the unique things we bring to the table. One last thing I'll say about this slide: we obviously always see question and answer, and I was intentional about putting question and message because when you give presentations, it's important to make sure that, and politicians do this very well. You receive questions, but there's a message behind what you need to give back in that answer. So make sure you're delivering your message, and still answering their question, but make sure you're delivering your message. That helps reinforce maybe the presentation you just gave, or it helps you talk to a point that maybe you weren't able to get to during the presentation. Thank you guys for taking the time to